spooky season, and you know exactly what that means. All the ghosts, ghouls, werewolves, and vampires are out on the prowl. It has been quite a while since I have done a Dracula's Adaptations, Sequels, and Spinoffs video, and I'm finally here to do a new one, and today we are discussing Nosferatu The Vampyre, a adaptation of sorts of the original Nosferatu, and by extension an adaptation of Dracula. Now, I never expected myself to really watch this movie because I'm not the biggest fan of Klaus Kinski. He really creeps me out, and especially just like finding out certain things about him, it became very difficult for me to view any of his performances and just without feeling the ick and getting the ick. But I did want to check this one out, especially since I have seen the other two Nosferatus. I at least wanted to give this a chance, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. I did really enjoy it, and while I of course have my critiques, and I think there's some important things to talk about as far as the overall working conditions and things that people have said happened on set, I do want to talk a lot about the atmosphere and dive into it in the same way I have done the other Dracula films that I have covered on the channel. If you are new here, I'm Ainsley, and this is where I dive a little deeper into film, television, and media. I have been doing this series not for very long, but it has been about 10 months or so since 9-10 months since I did my previous video, and that was on the original Nosferatu, and I've gone around to kind of taking some notes, but I find it a lot harder to talk about things that I don't really enjoy. There's been a few Draculas that I've watched that I really haven't been able to get into, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this one as well, not only to talk about all of the Nosferatus, but also to talk about a Dracula movie that I genuinely enjoyed. If you would like to watch this film before continuing with the video, where you can watch it will be in the description box below, along with my resources and where else you can find The Quiet Riot. Reminiscent of its predecessor, and made in the style of its director, Nosferatu The Vampyre is a soft gothic tale of desire and the duality of nature. Adapted from F.W. Munro's Nosferatu, Werner Hertzog's film uses the original character names established in Dracula. Haunting and atmospheric, Nosferatu mends the gothic nature of the original film and Stoker's novel, with Herzog's personal style. The movie manages to remake classic and remain true to the original while making changes that benefit the film. While the movie remains haunting thanks to great direction and cinematography, stories from set make the film even more nightmarish. With a long list of Count Draculas, we are left to ask, who is Dracula in Werner Herzog's Nosferatu The Vampyre? This is Werner Herzog's second film with Klaus Kinski, and by then he already knew how to handle him. It's crazy to me that they worked together as much as they did, because Klaus Kinski sounded like the type of person that you 100% do not want to work with. The fact that he got work, I guess, is just a testament to how great he was at playing weird characters and over-the-top characters, and if anyone can do it, it would be Klaus Kinski. After learning how to deal with the erratic behavior of the actor and desiring a more subdued performance, Herzog decided that he would send Kinski into tantrums in order to tire him out. His exhaustion led to a calmer, more melancholic performance. Dracula is a sad figure who struggles as an immortal being. A castle in ruins, he is pale and drenched in darkness as Jonathan Harker eats at the table beside him. A castle in ruins, the castle appears intact upon Harker's arrival, and this adds to the nightmarish quality of the film. This movie is very dreamlike in a very fairy tale-esque way. It's got a lot of nightmarish tendencies, which is of course very reminiscent of the gothic novel that it is inspired by and the original film that it is essentially an adaptation of. There is quite a few differences, but for most part it is telling the story that Munro had told in his German Expressionist film. We can tell a lot through the cinematography and the use of lighting and all of these different aspects of the movie, from makeup to the dresses that they were wearing, the kind of world in which Hertzog wanted to build and build upon. It is a much more subdued gothic tale than even Monroe's film, because I found that Count Orlok is a lot more he has a lot more desire to drink blood and wreak havoc and cause this plague, whereas, and then have the Mina character, or in this case the Lucy character, be with him, where that is a desire that Dracula in Nosferatu the Vampire has, with the exception of being kind of having this desire for death and this feeling of intense loneliness. Two versions of the film were shot simultaneously, one in English and the other in German. Hertzog liked both, but found that the German one was more authentic, and this makes complete sense considering that a lot of the actors in this were German, and Hertzog himself is German, and so it makes sense that the German language version would be a lot more authentic. Dracula's makeup here was styled after Max Schreck's from the original film, and it was done by Japanese artist Riko Crook. Apparently they didn't really get along with Hertzog, but they did end up getting along with Kinski, which is interesting because not a lot of people get along with Kinski on sets. So I guess just the time that they spent together, they were able to get along quite well. And I mean, in comparison to some of the films that Hertzog and Kinski did together, this seemed to be, for the most part, in terms of the relationships of some people involved in the film, a lot better. Jonathan Harker is married to Lucy Harker. This differs from the book because in the novel, he is married to Mina Harker. And a lot of times with adaptations of Dracula, you will have certain characters that just don't exist, and there's definitely been times where certain characters are merged, which is something that often happens in adaptations. One of the biggest problems with Dracula adaptations, I think, is that some of the best characters get small roles, much smaller roles, or they're completely eradicated from the adaptation. And it's been a minute since I read the book. What I really want to do is I want to read the book, and then one of the ones that I talk about, I want to do more of a comparison. I really do like this. I'm going to say this edition of Mina, though it is Lucy here, because she is quite this light kind of gothic type. Like, she's not dressed completely in black, and her wardrobe is very light and like white, and then she's got this really, like, it contrasts with her dark makeup and her hair, and to me it very much symbolizes her, the way in which she changes over the course of the film, because even though she maintains this very innocent way about her, whether it's just like the veneer or her personality, there is still change that is happening. And Isabel, who portrayed her, in a lot of things that she was saying, that comes off because there's this sense of her giving in to what happens when Dracula comes to her. Isabella Adjani is so good in this movie, and I have previously seen her film Possession, and that film is majorly intense, and I do recommend it for anybody who loves like weird, intense movies. It's not for everyone, and it's certainly not for every evening that you sit down, but if you're looking for something intense and weird and emotionally wrought, that's a pretty good movie. But having seen that, I suspected that Adjani would be really good in this role, and she definitely has a knack for playing these type of characters that are in some way possessed. And while Lucy is not possessed by Dracula, she does experience these nightmares that take her over, and they're almost premonitions. Like, she knows that something's coming. She senses the doom that's coming. When Harker first sees Dracula's castle in Transylvania, he sees the castle as if it's in ruins. But when he gets there, it is intact, and this adds to that dreamlike quality. When Jonathan Harker arrives to the castle, typically the person who is taking Jonathan Harker to Dracula's castle is Dracula himself, kind of covered up, but in this film, it is not, and Kinski's Dracula meets him at the door, and in meeting him, he is somebody who seems, he's very, like, you get this sense that he's just very disillusioned and depressed, and it's a much more subdued performance than you'd expect of Kinski, but also that you'd expect of this character. There's real no sense of sexuality, sensuality, or sophistication. From the moment that we meet Kinski's Dracula, he does appear to be a much more tragic figure. He's lonely and ready for death, and that really happens, and we see that from the first moment and to his last moments with Lucy. Throughout his visit, Harker is visited by Dracula at night, while back in Germany, Lucy begins experiencing nightmares. And there's that those situations between them tend to mirror each other, where Lucy is having these very vivid nightmares that warn her of the impending doom that is to face Germany, but that is also facing Jonathan Harker back in Transylvania. While Harker remains in the castle, Dracula leaves for Wismar, Germany. The rats in the film that were brought to Germany by Dracula were shipped to the filming locations, and they were given no food or water during the shipping. And when they arrived, some of the rats had cannibalized each other, which is what rats tend to do. And this was like the first start of animal cruelty on the set. There has been the animal trainer who was brought on spoke of this, and also spoke of the fact that the horses and other animals weren't treated very badly, though they didn't go into specifics. But what we do know is that more of the rats had died in the dying process because they were white rats and they wanted them to be brown. And I guess in the dying process, they had to put them in boiling water, which of course most of them are not going to survive that. That was one of the things that I was really horrified to find about. I know that for so long, the way that animals were treated on sets, they were treated just like almost any other prop for the most part, and it seems that they weren't respected for being live-in beings here. So I just wanted to let everyone know that that is something that occurred. I don't think I could talk about this without mentioning that. Harker returns home, though he is still very ill, and when he arrives, he doesn't even recognize Lucy. And Dracula goes to her at night, demanding her to give him the love that she gives Jonathan. And he's very possessive of her already, and he definitely has this belief that if he's with Lucy, life is going to be better. And we know that there has definitely been the relationship between Dracula and Mina has been represented very much so in a big love story. And different films and series have represented it very differently, but they're not the love story, Dracula and Mina. And that's not always the case, but in some has been presented in that way. And here, the relationship that occurs between Dracula and Lucy is him trying to possess her, because he wants what Jonathan has. He wants the love that Jonathan has. And when he saw that picture that Jonathan had, I think while of course Isabella Adjani is gorgeous, Isabella Adjani, absolutely gorgeous, I believe that he would see a picture and be like, gotta have her. But I do think he wants the intimacy that comes with love, and he wants that as opposed to just like wanting to consume her. It's a sense of like possession and desire that goes beyond what love is. It's not love. Lucy attempts to warn the townspeople of what is happening, that it has something to do with Dracula, but they are of course too distracted. Things are not going well for the people, as people are dying of the plague, and things just seem to be getting worse. And they do believe that it is the rats doing, and that is a very understandable thing, because and that is the cause of it. But I don't know, I feel like if this just random shit's happening, I feel like you may want to believe Lucy. And I find that Lucy here is very representative of the character that is in on what is happening, whether she is witnessing it, and for her it's these dreams. She knows who Dracula is, and she's putting two and two together. She's putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, and yet people are witnessing this really horrible thing happening. The plague is spreading, things are getting a lot worse, and they're not believing what she is saying. And a part of me really understands that, because they have pretty much solved what is happening, because they know that it has something to do with the rats, and I can understand why they don't want to believe that there's any type of supernatural thing happening, but I also just want to shake them, because what do you mean you don't believe her? Listen to her. It can get worse. Lucy finds the book that Jonathan was given and finds out that she must lure Dracula to her room and distract him until the sun comes up. She does this, killing Dracula, and unfortunately she does know that in this moment she is sacrificing herself, and Van Helsing drives a stake through his heart to be sure that he has died. In Monroe's Nosferatu, things go a little differently, as it ends in the room and he ends up going to his wife and holding her before she eventually passes away, and that it does not end there. The biggest difference between Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, and Nosferatu the Vampire is its ending, as the characters and what happened to them, it's quite different, and it doesn't end there in Lucy's room. Harker ends up having Van Helsing arrested for the murder of Dracula, and he has the maid sweep up the stuff that Lucy had put around him so he couldn't move, and basically goes off and is becoming almost like he's the next Dracula. He's taking on the mantle. Is that the saying? He's taking it on, if you will. I mean, I'm sure he's like his own person, and we can only think of what's gonna happen next. But Harker is the only one that has sort of a happy ending, I guess, if you can call it that. But in the end, is he just destined to have an ending similar to Count Dracula? I guess we'll just have to think about it. What do you think? Is he gonna have? I think that is part of the message, and the theme here of what Hertzog was trying to say, is that in mortality, we can dream of it, but in the end, it can be very lonely and sad, and you'll still find yourself disillusioned, and probably even more so because you're living hundreds and hundreds of years and watching people die, and you don't really get to experience the things that other people are experiencing. And it's interesting because he does walk off with kind of like cockiness, and you have the fact that his wife died and sacrificed her life, so her sacrifice is for naught, really, even though she did her ultimate goal as far as ridding the world of Dracula worked, but she didn't really get to rid her city and the people that she cared about of this force. I was really surprised by this change at the end, because the character of Harker was very similar to other renditions of the character and very similar to that was in Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. So when it came to what here happened at the end, I was quite surprised by it. I didn't mind that it happened because I found that it was an interesting change. It allowed for not only a difference from Stoker's Dracula, but also a difference from the original film. I also like that it wasn't necessarily this clear-cut conclusion. The idea that this evil continues to live on, and even though Lucy was able to, I can't say that entirely what she did was in vain, but the fact that she sacrificed herself, and in the end, what she wanted for her husband and for others didn't really get to happen. It gives like this sadness, and I'm not somebody who definitely needs a clear-cut one here, and I think it builds the world and broadens the world of Herzog's Nosferatu. Nosferatu the Vampyre is not just tragic for Dracula, it's tragic for the rest of the characters whose lives continue to spiral after Dracula is defeated. Harker has now turned, and Van Helsing is arrested for the murder of the Count. No one wins, as everyone either dies or ends up in a prison. For Van Helsing, it is a literal prison, and for Harker, it is the prison of the living dead. I was quite surprised by my love for this film because I haven't seen a lot of Hertzog's work. He works with Kinski a lot. And that's pretty much why, and I tend to avoid a lot of Kinski's work. I've definitely seen it before, and I never say that he's a bad actor. He's just somebody that it's hard for me to stomach him personally, and I found him a lot more digestible in this film, and I think that's because it is a much more subdued performance. I hate that Hertzog had to go about sending him into a tantrum before takes, but I guess that was the burden that he bared. I enjoy a look at Dracula in this way. There's definitely been ones where he's quite he's very melancholy and he's just a sad figure, and in this one particularly, Dracula cuts a sad figure. He is somebody who has a lot of desire, but he doesn't have this thirst for blood. He has this desire for life, I believe, and I think he has more of a desire of death just because he's been living for a really long time, but he has a desire to have something that other people have, and that comes off in his desire for Lucy here. At this point, my favorite portrayal of the character personally is House of Dracula, or Dracula, released in 1958. I think that the way in which that character is portrayed in this very kind of sexual and sensual way is something that entices me personally, but I do love the way this character can be written to be in so many different ways, and I think that comes into how we view the character of Dracula, and we view what it may be like if you were a vampire and you've been around for so long, the things that you witnessed, the things that you've done, the fact that the humanity that you once had is completely gone. And I think for Dracula in Nosferatu the Vampyre, he is somebody who has now probably lived years and years, and he's committed many a immoral thing, murder, eaten people, drink a lot of blood, and I think he's coming to a point where that is not enough, and his thirst cannot be satiated, and what he really desires in these moments is to be loved, to experience what Jonathan Harker has experienced, and that is a tragedy of the life of a vampire, and that is the tragedy of what it is to be Dracula. He misses something that humans have that a vampire, even if they are Count Dracula, cannot have. And here Dracula is completely feared, and because of this he is very lonely, and so he decides to go to Germany and essentially, I don't want to say take, but he tries to get Lucy to give him what she gives Jonathan, and she won't. And I think at that end, when he realizes what she has done, I don't think here it isn't like, oh shit. It is more, thank God. Like, it is like almost a sense of relief for this character. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch me or listen to me dive a little deeper into Nosferatu the Vampyre. If you have watched this video all the way through and you haven't watched the original film, I do recommend it. There are places that you can watch it for free. Again, I just wanted to give the warning that there was animal cruelty in making this film, and that may be a reason you don't want to see it. That's something that if I find out that happened on a movie, I have to mention it. I'm sorry that this movie, so many of my videos lately have come up so much later than I wanted them to. I have been going through a major transition in my life, and it's just made it very difficult for me to sit down and film. I say this so many different times with some type of excuse, but sometimes life, it just makes it hard to do the things that you really want to do and love and stuff. But I hope that you see me a lot sooner next time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you would like to check out my other Dracula videos and you haven't already, those will be linked in the description box below, along with other playlists. And if there is a Dracula movie that you would like to see my thoughts on, let me know in the comments below. I do have a few that I will do eventually because I know I want to do the John Carradine films. I think I'm going to do them all together because I don't know if I'll necessarily have as much to say for those. So if there's like just a few you want to tell me about, let me know in the comments. I hope you have a wonderful day, you're enjoying your spooky season, your fall time, and you have a happy Halloween.